What's up guys? Today we are trying something completely new and I'm super excited for it. Alright guys, so today we are making a sourdough bread using this sourdough starter. Today I'm going to be using Joshua Weissman's recipe from YouTube. I've made this recipe a few times, but I think this time it's going to turn out a little better because I've done a little bit more work with the sourdough starter. So I'm hoping it turns out really delicious because I'm making a delicious pot roast and I want good bread with it. So if you're interested in learning how to make a sourdough using a sourdough starter, or if you just want to watch me cook, then let's hop into it.
So this is going to be all the ingredients and supplies you need to make one sourdough. Keep in mind I halved the original recipe because the original recipe makes 2 sourdoughs and I only need 1. But if you're interested in making 2 loaves of bread, I will put a link below to the video I got this recipe from. And also keep in mind he has a link to the recipe online, but the recipe online does not match with what he says in the video, so I'm going off the video today. Just a quick heads up and reminder, this recipe takes a long time. The recommended time for the sourdough is 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. So make sure you give yourself enough time because I always forget about that with this recipe. This is the most important part of the recipe. This is a sourdough starter, and I'll leave a link below on how to make one of these. So the first step to this recipe is making our levain using our starter. We're going to take 17.5 grams of our mature starter dough right here. You'll see that I go up to 35, which is a mistake. That's the original recipe and I lost the footage of re-recording it. So just ignore that. It's supposed to be 17.5. I did fix it. All right, we're going to add in our all-purpose flour. Then we're going to add in our whole wheat flour, both 17.5 grams, and then our room temperature water at 35 grams. All right, and then we're just going to take that and mix it all together. Oops. And after we get that all mixed together, we're just going to place a tea towel over it and let it sit till we're ready to work with it. Let's just check out the levain real quick. This has 1 more hour left to go, and this is what it looks like. All right, so with an hour left, we're going to be making our dough. First is going to be our 402 grams of bread flour. Next will be 35 grams of our whole wheat flour. We're gonna mix that together real quick. And then we're gonna add in our 330 grams of water at 90 degrees Fahrenheit and stir that in. It will stick to your fingers a bit, but just keep going until it's fully incorporated. And we'll be back to working with this in an hour. It's been an hour since we last messed with the dough, so we're now time to incorporate the levain into our main dough. We're going to just put that over the top. And we're going to use that 40 grams of water that we set aside for later and put it on our fingers to help spread it over the dough. Putting it on our fingers is going to help our fingers from sticking. Then we're just gonna mix those two in to each other as best as we can. Take like a good minute to do so. And there we go. All right, and before we let that dough rest, we are gonna put it out on the counter without any flour. And we're gonna do my favorite part, which is called the slap and fold. So with this, you're pretty much going to be slapping the dough down, flipping it over itself, grabbing its sides. And I'm kind of fumbling with it here at the beginning because it keeps sticking so much to my hands. And as you do this more and more, it'll stop sticking to your hands. Now at first I wasn't rotating the dough while doing this, and I think that is an important step. Yeah, you should be rotating it each time you go to pick it up. And once that's done, we're going to put that to the side and let it rest for 25 minutes before we add the salt. So we let that rest for about 25 to 30 minutes, and now we're going to be adding the 9 grams of sea salt. And the rest of that 40 grams of water. We're just going to mix those in until they are fully combined, just like before. Alright, now it's time for the slap and fold again with the salted dough. I seem to be having some trouble with the amount of water that I added. I think I added too much water to this, and I'm really having a hard time getting it fully incorporated. And after a while, I kind of give up and add some flour because I just cannot get this thing to incorporate itself. And finally, after adding that flour, I'm able to get it to a more texture it's supposed to have at the end of this slap and fold. A good way to clean up that up. Get a bunch of those crunchies off. Alright, so after 15 minutes, we're gonna grab our dough again, and what we're gonna do is stretch and fold over. And we're gonna do this a total of 6 times. The first 3 times is going to be in 15-minute intervals. So this time, wait 15 minutes. Next time, wait 15 minutes. And here goes our second time folding. And then our third fold. And after this third fold, it is going to be 30 minutes till the next fold. All right, and then after those 30 minutes, it's going to be the fourth fold. Another 30 minutes, going to be the 5th fold. And finally, the final 6th fold. All right, now here I made a mistake. The written directions said 1.5 hours resting after you finish your folding. But actually in the video it says 2.5 hours. So make sure you're letting this sit for 2.5 hours based off the video, not the online recipe. So right here, all I'm doing is putting this out on the counter and shaping it. In the video, he cuts it in half, but since I'm only making 1 loaf, I just shape it into a nice little round, and we just leave it out on the counter for 20 minutes. All right, so now we're gonna be shaping our dough. First, we're gonna cover it with some flour. I just made a complete blunder here. I cover it with flour and I proceed to loosen it up with the bench scraper. And I should be flipping over the dough, but I just proceed to go into the folds. Now the first fold is going to be about halfway up the dough from you, and then take your right side and fold it about 3/4, and then the left side just completely fold it over, and then from the back towards you all the way. And then we want to grab 2 ends and twist them over each other and stamp them down. You're going to do that from the back, the middle, and try to really get them to stay down, and then finish with that front fold. And then from there, you're going to roll it from you all the way down into like kind of a burrito shape. With the seam facing down, try to close that seam with your bench scraper, and then put a tea towel in your large bowl. Powder it with some whole wheat flour, and then put your dough, the butt side that you just closed, facing upwards. And there we go. And then you're going to put that in the fridge for overnight. Alright, so after you let it sit in your fridge overnight, you're going to wake up and turn your oven to its highest setting. My oven here's highest setting is 500. Do not set it to broil, just the highest temperature setting. And I'm going to take my heavy cast iron pot here and put it in the center rack in the oven. And we're gonna let that heat up for an hour. The hour gives it time to heat through and through before you put your bread in it. All right, so after an hour, you're gonna take out your hot pot. Keep in mind, this pot is very hot. Do not touch it with your bare hands. We're gonna take that dough out. We're gonna put a light dusting of flour over the top here. This is to keep it from sticking, because this will be the side facing down. You can see when I put the flour over in the pot, you can see it start to cook even. And you're just gonna try to do a gentle, ignore me making a huge mess. Once again, be careful about the hot edges of your pot. I'm just gonna center that in the pot real quick. Before we put it in there, we're gonna score the dough. You want to score it about 1/4 of an inch deep. It's kind of difficult with a knife. There's a particular tool you can use that actually is way more efficient than using a knife on this. But work with what you got. Gonna cover that back with the lid and toss it back in the oven. And I'm gonna put that in the oven for about 20 minutes at the same high temperature. After those 20 minutes, you're gonna wanna take the lid off and put your bread back in at 450 degrees without the lid for another 20 to 30 minutes to give it a nice dark brown color. All right, it's looking to how I like it, and that bread does certainly look good. It's got a nice browning exterior. Got a little excess flour on the sides, but looks really good. And you're gonna wanna let that bread cool on a wire rack for at least an hour or more. And looky there, that looks good. Here's a little sneak peek about what the bread's going with, my delicious pot roast. Let me know if you wanna hear more about that. And our bread is cool. Oh, that sounds so good. And after cutting it, the reveal of the inside. It's a little tighter than I would want, but there are some delicious pockets in there. And here's my final dinner that night. Now, it's time for me to give you my thoughts on this recipe. I think everyone should try this recipe at least once or twice, but I don't think I'm gonna be making this recipe ever again. The bread is good, but the process is time consuming no matter how much other people will say, if you want good bread, it takes time. But that's a lot of time that a lot of people don't have. It's kind of just a big process in general. And the product isn't worth the time to me. Not to mention that in the video, the recipe plus the online recipe contradict each other. Even in the video itself, it contradicts once. So I'm giving up on this recipe and I'm gonna try a different recipe. But like I said before, if you haven't tried this recipe, you should try it a couple times. Maybe bread making something you're really into. I think it's just something I'm not like hugely into. Now it did taste good with that pot roast. So if you want me to show y'all how to make that recipe is super easy. It's just called like a Mississippi pot roast. I've been making it for a couple years. It's one of those things that you just sear the meat in the morning, dump everything in, and let it cook for hours, and it comes out really good as long as you know what meat you're picking out and making sure you're giving it enough time to cook. So the bread is good. I'm probably never doing this recipe again until I forget in the future, like I always do, and remake this recipe because I've just forgot how much I loathe this recipe. But if you enjoyed this video and want more cooking videos, be sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know what in this video worked for you, what didn't work in this video for you, because it's the first time I've ever done a video like this. I was pretty excited editing it, and it felt really good when I was rewatching it, and I really enjoyed making this content. So if you want more of this content, let me know. Also, if you want to see more of this content, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification. Guys, y'all have a good one, and remember, always be your best.